Welcome to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno.
Is it true that some ghosts are trying to accomplish unfinished business? Are parasites making people dumber? When are the aliens going to save us from ourselves?
Well, hello there, and welcome to the 2013, the lucky 2013, I should say. And this is the 413th edition of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. Look, 1313. All right, I'm Ben.
Creepy, huh?
And those all-over-the-map questions came from my co-host and partner in the paranormal, my dad. So this evening, we're plunging into the new year with some more thoughtful, interesting emails that we have received from listeners like you. But first, our weekly paranormal contest. So the question from our last show on December 17th was, in 2008, a British paranormal club captured a film with what they believed to be the ghost of a soldier from the English Civil War. The picture was taken at the scene of what battle?
Well, actually, not a lot of people even tried to answer that. Nobody got it right. A number of those who did try complained that they were confused by the two reruns we did over the holidays, which each had a question of their own from days of yore, and of course those didn't count. Anyway, we'll be clearer on that at such times in the future. In any case, the correct answer to the question from the last live show, the correct answer to the correct question, was the Battle of Naseby during the English Civil War. That photo can be seen at, I'm not even going to try this long site, but go to BehindTheParanormal.com to the Talking Points page for this show, and you'll be able to get a link to that picture. I didn't want to put it on the website because, we don't own it. Anyway, we, again, BehindTheParanormal.com. The photo, which was taken at night, shows what appears to be a striding figure carrying a weapon. Personally, I think it's a tree. Anyway, besides, if it is a person and he's dead, he'd be dead, without life and not striding anywhere. So if the photo really is of a quote-unquote ghost, it's a photo through time, into a parallel world where it's still June 1645, and the battle is still going on. At least
Or
that's
a
what
parallel world with gun-toting trees.
Gun-toting trees. Hey, if you can conceive it, it's possible in quantum mechanics, right?
Oh, indeed.
Wizard of Oz.
So is the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, all that tree needed was...
How would you like it if I picked something off you?
Exactly. Oh, well, good thing you didn't know how to shoot.
I know.
I don't know why it's so hard for people to see ghost phenomena from that point of view anyway, but hey, it is what it is.
All right, so this week's question is, in what town in the United States of America would you find the alleged ghost of John Stetson? So nail that and win a copy of Faces at the Window, my dad's 1998 book.
So here we go.
Oh,
Okay.
boy.
Here's a short one, Ben. You like nice short ones.
I
This
do
is
like
from
short ones.
Courtney in Needham, Massachusetts.
Alrighty, so Courtney writes to us. Hi, Paul and Ben. I like to think that aliens are here to help us. As you guys say, maybe they created us and are trying to help us. Wait, did we say that?
What?
Did we ever say that?
Everybody else says that.
Oh, well, maybe we mentioned somebody else saying that. But you seem to think more like that scene in Independence Day when people are on top of the buildings to welcome the aliens and they get fried instead. I'd like to think that the aliens are good. Well, I guess we'd all like to think that.
That's right. We'd all like to think they're good, but the question is, the thing is, we just don't know.
Not everything is sunshine and roses.
Well, that's exactly right. And I remember we have people from the exopolitics movement.
Oh, yes.
On the show from time to time, and they just don't want to believe that there's anything nasty about any of these aliens. And we always ask them the question, what about the abduction phenomenon? People return with these horror stories, and especially if they really are being abducted by some sort of people who aren't like us, then the question arises, well, how benign can they be? Do they have consciences?
How could we even relate to them if they're nothing like us?
Well, exactly. Well, that's what Lovecraft always thought.
Yeah.
You know, these utterly alien is what an alien would be.
Yeah, that's the word alien. Like, different.
Well, that's the very word, different. But in any case, I just think that we need to present a balanced view on this. And personally, I don't know about Ben, but I think that we have a lot of questions about the motives, the origins, the nature, even the appearance of whatever these may be. We don't know if they're from other planets. I mean, we tend to see things from our own point of view, and that's a very limited point of view. And that point of view says, well, something's flying through the air, a little guy's come out of it, it's got to be a spaceship. Well, maybe not. I know that Ted Phillips from Sedalia, Missouri, who was a guest on the show once in a while, probably has the largest database of landing information about craft that have landed, UFOs that have landed, huge database that just includes thousands of recorded landings that have left physical traces, whether it be depressions in the grass or the crops or whatever, or footprints or things of that kind. Ted has it. And he says that the nature of UFOs has been changing somewhat. They don't look like craft very often anymore, nothing we would recognize. And many of the recent sightings have appeared to be something like orbs, such as we see in ghost photographs, so-called. So we really don't know what's happening with this whole scenario. And I just, and as I often say, I don't trust half the people I meet on the street, never mind something that's going to crawl out of some sphere or alien or whatever you want to call it. I just think we need, in the sense of prudence, to keep our guard up on these things.
Well, yeah, that's just like when we're taught as like kids in kindergarten, hold your hands when you walk across the street, look both ways, like don't talk to strangers. Like,
absolutely.
It's common sense stuff. If some like alien being comes down and says, "I'm going to take you away to a better place," that's just weird.
Well, Ben, you have a wonderful way of getting something across in a simple manner, which I tend to complicate things.
I try. I don't know why the aliens are Mickey Mouse, but
well, one thing that comes to mind is the Phoenix Lights. These were, Phoenix, of course, being Phoenix, Arizona, and starting in the 90s, that was very famous sighting. They began to see, up in the sky over the city, state capital, for all to see, including the governor. At the time, who later came out and admitted that he saw it himself, were strings of lights. And of course, after the fact, the Air Force of the National Guard, or the Army, I can't remember which, said, well, actually, we were dropping flares. That's what those were. Aha. But of course, they didn't act like flares, and not at all. So anyway, I was a witness myself to those a few years ago. Ben and I were on the way to San Diego to do a program. We were, of course, in an airplane. And there we are. Ben was asleep, but I saw the whole thing. And I did not feel what many people have said that they felt when they saw these things, which is great peace and a sense of being watched in a benign manner and sort of being taken care of. I didn't get that feeling at all, but of course not everyone who's seen these things says that. But a lot of the exopolitics people exopolitics means that we should be prepared to deal on I suppose, a diplomatic basis with whoever this might be, establish interplanetary relations. But of course, that's
how?
Well, how? And that's the assumption, not only that these people are willing to be dealt with and that they are what we think they are, it's the matter that they are also consider themselves on an equal level to us, which is highly dubious if they are advanced. And of course, my definition of advancement is not what everybody else's definition is. We assume that advancement means technological advancement, more gadgets, the ability to travel faster, farther, and higher, whatever. I don't see it that way. I think advancement is spiritual and moral advancement. I would rather be dealing with some being or group of beings that is spiritually and morally advanced or philosophically advanced, whatever, than one that is, like a kid who's found his father's gun. That kind of advancement is not advancement at all, in my opinion, technological advancement. So there we are. That's I don't know what else to tell you there, Courtney, but that seems to be our point of view certainly on that. So there we have it. You ready for a long one, Ben?
Let's just take it in stride. Let me just mark it up so then we can...
All right. Okay. This is the subject. Short question. This is Lori J. from Attleboro, Mass.
Oh, good. Perfect. All right, so I know you guys like short questions. So why does burning sage help chase away bad spirits?
Okay, well, that's a very good question, and we do suggest that people do that. Matter of fact, a new case in Connecticut, we were suggesting that just recently, although that was me because you didn't go.
No.
But in any case, sage is, of course, an herb. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
it's part of the mint family.
Thank you, Ben. part of the benefit. You are encyclopedic in your knowledge of these things.
I don't know.
And, of course, what one does is simply to burn the leaf, the dried leaf, and it creates a very lovely aroma. And it does seem to calm things down in paranormal situations. And, of course, the question here, the way this is worded, I would have to, of course, take a look at that. Chase away bad spirits. And, again, I have to say, anybody who is an experienced listener here knows that I don't consider these to be spirits. Now, spirit means a disembodied being without a body. And I don't see how people can be people without their bodies. Our point of view, of course, as everyone knows who listens regularly, is that these are not as dead people who have become spirits. These are actual people with actual bodies who are existing in parallel realities as theorized in quantum physics.
Maybe she means parasites?
Well, bad spirit. Yeah, I would interpret that as parasites.
Yeah, so
those are not people, but they still have bodies in my experience because I've had physical contact and confrontations with them.
Yeah.
All right, even though you can't see them very clearly usually. But in any case, whatever they may be, sage does seem to have an effect. And it's very interesting that way because there are other things that seem to have effects on these things as well. One of them is bells. Now, of course, we associate bells with churches, and we wonder whether where this tradition came from. The fact is that it was an ancient belief, and many ancient beliefs have a lot of wisdom to them. And as a matter of fact, even medicine, modern medicine, is discovering that many folk remedies actually had value. It was believed that bells chased away demons, the sound of the bells. And wouldn't you know, the beings upon which the demon stories, I believe, are based are parasites, as we call them. And they're not spirits, they're not servants of Satan, they're actual life forms that seem to be interdimensional and that feed upon our energy. Weird as it sounds, that's what they have been in my decades of experience on this. So what we find is that when you ring bells, they often will be frightened. I don't know if it's frightened, but they will at least be quiet for a while, or sometimes even leave it. I don't know.
That was like the lore of church bells, and that's why churches have bells.
Exactly, yeah. And one might think, well, perhaps these are setting up certain sound waves that might, when they are present to us, they are partially in our world. Mm. And when we have experiences of them, we're partially in their world.
Yeah.
And that seems to be how it works with any paranormal situation. And it happens a lot during the day, and you don't even notice it because it doesn't stand out. Nothing's hitting you overhead with a chair or anything. So that's actually happened to me.
Oh, let's hope not.
Yeah. So that seems to be the case. So the bell, the sound waves from the bell perhaps have some sort of effect on their species, much as I suppose it would on some others. I know our cat doesn't like bells. He's a pretty strange cat, but I rang that little bell that's down in our library, and he just doesn't like that.
Yeah, so, he doesn't really.
Yeah.
Really
so in any case, a sage may be something similar. It has the properties of being known throughout various cultures as being a very cleansing and calming effect on the general scene. So I think that's essentially what it is. That when these parasites are present, they are partially in our world, and whatever they. I'm not entirely. I've identified about 9 species of these things, but whether they have senses as we do is another question. Let me give you. People seem to be calling, although not here.
No. It's for the contest question. The trivia question.
The contest. Okay, good. But nevertheless, let me give you the number again for those who are in the local area, particularly 401-766-1240, and anywhere in the U.S. 800-449-1240. If you'd like to talk to us during this open line show, which is pretty much we usually deal with emails, but people are very welcome to call in with any questions that may arise as we discuss these things.
So on to the next part of the question, which is why does sage help?
Well, I think I just explained that. You were on the phone, so maybe you didn't.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I kind of missed that.
No, that's all right.
I'm sorry about that.
We're pretty busy here in the studio. We don't just kind of, get to talk to each other that much. Except, anyway. So here's another question here. Ben is on the phone again, so I will
No, I'm sorry.
Give you this one. This one is from Mike in New York City here. And I will take the liberty of reading this because Ben's a little bit tied up. Hi, guys. When you talk about parasites, you always make the point that, quote, the devil made me do it, unquote, is no excuse, and the people have to take the responsibility for their own actions. that's good. But have you noticed that people seem to be getting dumber, and so they have less personal responsibility? Could parasites be pushing buttons, as you say, to make people dumber? Love your show. You talk about interesting stuff nobody else does. In fact, you are smarter than most of your guests. You should do more open line shows. Well, thank you very much, Mike. As Mark Twain says, I can live 6 months on one good compliment. But that's kind of an interesting point.
I kind of missed that. You want to give me?
Okay, yeah,
you keep talking.
Yeah. As people get, as Mike puts it, dumber, do they become more susceptible to the influence of parasites? That perhaps might be the case. We find that if people are not thinking logically or are not thinking critically, they may fall into a number of traps if they're interested in the paranormal. Among these might be using Ouija boards or doing seances, these sledgehammer tactics that are just no good because you're knocking holes in space-time and anything can come through, usually none too friendly. So that is a distinct possibility. We often find that people are just they have trouble getting the idea that they shouldn't do these things because they can be dangerous. In a way, Ben, we grow. I don't know if you need parasites to make people dumber.
Well, no.
We seem to be doing a good job on our own. We grow up in a world where we are protected from everything, and that's with the best of intentions. But when I was a kid, I used to take you to the playgrounds. When you were little, you and your brother too, and things were changing. Even then, things became safe. We were allowed to make mistakes when I was a kid back in days of yore. Of course, the Triceratops was grazing on the town green back then. But the thing is, and when we made a mistake, if you put your hand on that hot stove, you never did it again.
Yeah.
If you fell out of that tree, you learned, well, gee, I can't just jump out of a tree and fly. You never did that again either. You were very careful. But today, people are not allowed to make mistakes. Right here in Woonsocket is a great town in many ways, but I will never get over some of the habits of the people. People walk in the middle of the street, and I don't get that. I mean, we even see people with baby carriages, maybe not in the middle of the street, but on the side. Now, of course, I can see it in the winter because nobody shovels their sidewalks, so you have to walk in the street. But I mean, and a bunch of kids sort of walked out in front of him, didn't even look. The first thing we were taught, I sound like the old grandpa here, but the first thing we were taught was look both ways when you cross the street.
Well, it made me an old grandpa too, because so you taught me.
Yeah, exactly. And we lived on at the end of a dirt road when you were born.
Yeah.
But still, we moved to quote unquote the city here. You were taught to do that. So I mean, Mike kind of strikes a chord with me here. People really do seem to be getting kind of dumb. And, there can be parasitic consequences to that if you happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. So, I don't know, what do you have to say on that?
Well, you pretty much hit the nail on the head, but I feel like parasites don't help.
No.
I mean, there's a lot of factors in our society that make it so people get dumber. I mean, we're distracted constantly. Mm-hmm. I mean, like, everyone in my generation always has their phone out. Like, I would be over, like, a friend's house, and like his entire family would be like on their phones or iPads or whatever, what have you, or laptops, and like they'd just be sitting around just doing that, not talking, and I'm just like, this is scary. Like,
yeah,
this is scary. There's like no contact whatsoever, and people are losing social skills. People don't know how to talk to other people. There's a lot of factors besides that, but I feel like that he does have a point in his statement there. But
well, what do we find is one of the major factors in parasite influence and in parasite cases? Isolation.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Yeah, people isolated from one another. And the biggest healing technique that we have found in that is bringing people together. Putting your energies and your mind and your affection and your humor and all the good things you can muster, all the positive energy you can muster together, and that keeps parasites away.
Yeah. Well, then it's just a matter of getting away from, well, maybe individuality is probably a sort of, probably doesn't help that either. I mean, the whole concept of it, like, well, when it comes from individuality to narcissism.
Yeah, exactly, yes.
That's when it gets out of control.
Well, as I said, my last book, certainly, there really is no such thing as an individual. As I said, with all due respect to the founders of our country, and the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and everything, the fact is that we really are a communal group. We, it's like there's no such thing as one person. I mean, there's always a community, and in the multiverse point of view that we always expound upon in this show, we really are each other. There are concrete connections in more ways than one. So in any case, Mike, I think, has an excellent point here that we need to be a little bit. We need to be smart these days, not just street smarts, but street smarts would include being aware of situations that can make us vulnerable to, if you want to call it, spiritual dangers or anything of that kind. Okay, so thank you, Mike, for writing in. Okay, I am going to get started on this one from John F. And John just says USA, so he's somewhere in the United States. My dear Paul and Ben, you are. This is embarrassing. I'm not going to. These compliments are. We appreciate them, but shining lights in a long night of paranormal nonsense. Okay, but as much as I enjoy your shows, I have to say that a few of your shows and your last Coast to Coast appearance really haunt me. Pardon the pun. These are shows in which you speak about parasites having easier access to our world because of thinning world boundaries. I am an astrophysicist, and I can say that I believe every word you say is correct when you talk about the odd electromagnetic energy in our galactic neighborhood lately. If your theory about EM fields, electromagnetic fields that is, affecting these boundaries is correct, and I have every reason to believe that it is, we are in for some major upheavals. EM fields can affect human behavior in certain circumstances, and I think these recent and terrible acts of violence are examples of that. Okay, that's the first paragraph. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry about that. We just got a contest winner, Donna Fantoni of Woonsocket, Rhode Island.
Oh, very good. Yep. A local winner. That's great.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'll give you all the other information after the show.
Okay.
Can't really give that on the air. Any hoodles. So we're on to the second paragraph, are we?
Yes.
All right. I am no believer in the end of the world in December.
This came. We're still trying to catch up with these.
I was not a believer of the end of the world in December. But I do believe that some kind of change is in the offing. My question to you is, do you and the, quote, neighbors, unquote, stick to your beliefs over the past few years that we face a great and negative invasion, or for lack of better words, by parasites? P.S. You are right about the vast majority of scientists. They are fearful of academic ridicule and generally will not stick their necks out for new ideas. Unless you are a renowned nutcase with a Ph.D., you can't get away without losing your job.
Wow. Yeah. Well, we always kind of suspected that. Yeah. But thank you very much, John. Boy, I wish you would tell us where you teach. I assume you're a professor. I'd like to talk to you further. But obviously, you have to watch out for your job and that sort of.
That's understandable.
Yeah, we have some very courageous PhDs who do come on the show often enough. So, in any case, okay, I guess essentially the question here is, okay, so we all got through December. We never really believed in that anyway. We always said we kind of took it with a pillar of salt. And major changes are always taking place in the world. And December 21st didn't seem to be anything special about that. However, in the galactic neighborhood, the fact remains that a lot of strange energies do seem to be bounding around, electromagnetic energies, because of there are certain alignments in the galactic area has flattened out, and that changes things here and there. I'm not an astrophysicist myself, but we have been told by people who know that there are interesting things going on. But that doesn't mean anything weird is going to happen here. However, we have noticed, and maybe it's because we're better known these days than we used to be, we have noticed a lot of increased paranormal activity from every which where. People are contacting us from every place about this. Strange things are happening, seemingly more than they used to, or at least people are noticing them more.
Yeah.
I don't know. We feel that these boundaries between these parallel worlds that we're always talking about are thinning. More people are having weird experiences, it seems. Almost everyone we meet. What about among your friends and their families? We've been hearing things from.
Oh, yeah, of course. Wait. Sorry, my mic wasn't on. Oopsies. Well, yeah, of course. You always hear I always hear weird things from people, and they always ask my advice on what to do. My friend had a really weird experience on New Year's Eve, And before that, he had like this really weird thing happen in his house where the drawers would open when nobody was home, and all the silver would just get taken out and placed in like all over a table when nobody was there, and the house was locked and everything. Which it hasn't happened again, but there were a lot of other weird things that happened. But anyway, from what I've seen, it seems like, and what I've heard, things have been increasing in, what's the word? Frequency. There has been an increase in frequency of these events occurring, whether it's just people taking notice of them, or maybe something weird is really happening. Like, I don't know enough to say it's electromagnetic fields, because I'm not an astrophysicist, nor do I know much about plate tectonics besides what I learned in a general education course on astronomy. I don't really have the knowledge to say for sure that this is due to cosmic events, because I'm not an astrophysicist. We can't really rely on experts to say anything, because, well, mass hysteria would take place if they were to say, hey, the galaxy's flattening out, this is going to do a lot of weird things to us.
Well, if anybody was paying attention. People don't pay attention to the news anymore. Well, I almost don't blame them, but you have to be responsible if you're going to be a voter.
Yeah, that's true. I don't even like reading newspapers. But still, the point being is... Actually, I forgot my point.
See, you think you were my age.
No, I had something going, and then it just sort of...
Well, no, I mean, I see your point. Actually, we're going to take a break, time for a break at the bottom of the hour.
Then we can gather our thoughts
We'll go right back and gather our thoughts. Maybe
yeah.
we can remember what we were talking about.
Yes.
What you were talking about. But no, there are a couple of points I wanted to make on this, which I think might be significant.
Alrighty.
But in any case, we're going to take a break. You're listening to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno on WOON, 1240 AM in New England's beautiful Blackstone River Valley. Stay with us.
Hi, Rick Pickard here. The great sounds of rock and roll is back every Sunday from 1 to 4. Memory Lane will be playing songs from the 50s and early 60s. Be part of the great memories and sounds. See you there.
ON Radio, ON Worldwide.
Okay, it's Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno, and we are talking about a letter here from Mike, who is an astrophysicist, who was saying that he sort of agrees with our points of view on things. And I just wanted to point out, as Ben was saying, that a number of people have been reporting strange things, people in his sphere of friends and this thing. And, of course, granted, he is the youngest internationally recognized paranormal expert in the world, so he's going to hear things. So what I would say on this is there's a point that is important, and that's that we've got energies flying around that could be responsible for some of these things. And that is the point that we are trying to make, that the boundaries are thinning. Now, everybody will say, well, something opened the drawer and took the silverware out and set the table. It must have been, quote, the ghost that did it. Well, not necessarily. I'm always using analogies to describe
Well, it didn't really set the table. It was just sort of like strewn across the table.
Oh, kind of like we set the table at home. All right. So what happens is that very often there are energies that create funny things with space-time.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and these things can happen. Many cases of odd and random events are not necessarily, quote, the ghost doing it, unquote. It's the energies that are present when paranormal phenomena can manifest. They may have nothing to do with any particular entity or person who's there. What I always talk about is, people, running down the hallway and the papers fly off the desk because of the air they stir up.
Yeah.
Or opening the kitchen door, in comes your neighbor, but also in comes the mosquito and all this other stuff.
Now tell me of electromagnetics.
Oh, yeah, well, electromagnetic fields.
How would that have to do with this?
Okay, well, those pictures we get?
Yeah.
With those weird, brilliant lights sort of in lines across scenes, and there's one room on one side, one on the other, this kind of thing. Those, I believe, are world boundaries. What is creating the bright light, in my opinion, has been essentially plasma, electrically charged air molecules. And what is an electrical field? An electrical field surrounds an electric current. So that I'm not big on gadgets, neither are you.
No.
But early in the 1990s, when I first started to use an EMF meter, I may have been, I don't know, maybe I was one of the first ones to use it because an engineer, a friend of mine, suggested it. I was editor of the local weekly newspaper at the time, so I didn't quite advertise this. It wasn't even digital yet. It just had a meter. And I would notice that you could follow electrical fields and the currents that they surrounded. And when they had absolutely no apparent source, the electrical currents, I'd start to get suspicious, And there's more to it than that, but essentially that an electromagnetic field, or electrical field, I should say, surrounds an electrical current. And when the field is reversed on an electromagnetic field, or in other words, when today's digital EMF meters will go into the negative range, that sets up a flight. Now, I wish you had come. You and Mom were with me at that conference in Parkersburg, West Virginia, when I was a speaker there in 2003. And you were just a young lad, but you didn't go to that island at night to the so-called ghost walk.
No.
That I ended up leading again.
Well, I was like 9 years old. I was tired.
I know. Yeah, of course. So, but that was very interesting because there were several examples of that happening. And a number of interesting things happened, and that field went into the negative range. So, electromagnetic, everything is electromagnetic, really.
Yeah.
All matter is held together by electromagnetic energy. Gravity, fields, and everything else are all related to it. Mm-hmm. Things, essentially, and so it's what holds the universe together. And it's what holds the multiverse together, as we call all the various parallel universes that we.
So basically, if one has a powerful enough electrical current, could they then, and it had a significant field around it, would it be possible to reverse it and create a sort of suction effect? Like, do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yes.
Oh, well, that's a short answer to the question.
Yeah, I mean, people have asked. Well, there are other factors. Einstein said that space and time were curved.
Yeah.
And I believe these things do funny things with space and time.
Yeah.
And I've said this before on the air, but people have asked when you hear paranormal things, such as, pointing to 1971 to that case in those woods in Pomfret, Connecticut.
Yeah, or the Hutchinson effect.
You would hear a sound over here, somebody, like a farmer who's not there anymore, kind of banging on some kind of plow or something.
Yeah.
You'd run over there, and it would be just over here. Or if you would run over here, and it would just be just over here. You could never quite get to it, although you could hear it very clearly. There's the example of the laughing children that we heard in that same location, moving up and down this brook at an unnatural speed. And in that case, it was almost as if you weren't running to them. It was like they were in relation to you, having the same thing happen to them that was happening to you. Because again, people participate in these events, these paranormal experiences.
Yeah.
But to get back to what we were talking about with the fields, we fulfill the role of, I like to think it's a valuable role in some way, of experiencing what the people in the classrooms, the physicists, are talking about. They don't come out, and physicists don't come out generally, and although we did have an electrical engineer from URI who would come with us once in a while. You never knew him. It was before your time. My good friend Dr. Everett Chrisman from Woonsocket here. And he and others I would love to have come with us more, but generally they don't do that because they're afraid of their academic reputations. We are the ones who go out and experience it. But we don't have the classroom knowledge. They, however, do. And what we experience is what they describe, in my opinion. And hence that was the beginning of all these sort of theories that I think they're not necessarily our theories, but other people have sort of discovered them.
No, we're just sort of. No, and it's not really. We don't really claim ownership.
No, I think it might have been the first one to apply the ideas of the multiverse and quantum mechanics to cases, because I started doing that in the late 70s. Because I just couldn't explain it any other way. The old spiritualist ideas just didn't have any validity. That didn't explain anything. So that essentially is a long story about these electromagnetic fields. But I'm glad to see an astrophysicist kind of backing us up on this. And when Fred Allen Wolf, Dr. Quantum, was on the show, he kind of backed us up too in most of the ways.
So quick question: as you were mentioning about the Village of Voices sort of thing, where it would just be over here, or like if you ran over to it, it would just be over there. Is the experience based on somebody's perception? Because we are indeed participating in the event.
Simply by listening to it.
Yes.
Because that's one of the quantum ideas, is that the observer really makes the event what it is. The Heisenberg uncertainty principle in physics. Not to teach a physics class here, but that's the idea that something. Well, the particular illustration that's usually used is something is either a wave or a particle, depending on when you look at it. If it, you can't really measure how fast it's going and where it is at the same time. So this is all part of this scenario, that the observer participates in even the creation of reality. Pretty wild ideas here.
So how would one participate in, I wouldn't say pushing the voice, the disembodied thing, away? How would one participate in its movement?
Okay, well, that's an interesting question. You mean one thing we'd like to do is to find a way to participate in it so that it stops. If it's a bad interworld connection, such as with parasites, that kind of thing. How do you close it off? And certain things seem to do that. The sage we were talking about from the previous question. Yeah. The sage, the bells, even bringing in positive energy, prayer, humor, love, to sort of cut things off. You cut off the food supply, and the things won't bother you, at least not as much, or it might fade into the background, or might disappear entirely.
Right.
But the idea that what is our relationship exactly with it? Because nobody really knows. One thing I do suspect is that many times people, and this has come up too, we can project something. And what got me thinking on this was one of the few times I was watching one of these ghost hunting shows, which they're ludicrous in my opinion, most of them anyway. And somebody was saying, well, gee, can we have a change in the temperature? Assuming that this is the spirit of a dead person who was like all powerful and knows everything as soon as they, quote, pass over. I mean, that's an extremely dubious assumption. Yeah. I've run into many people who are in that position who don't know anything and are terrified and confused and everything else. So in any case, I wonder if, and of course the thermometer would change. And very often you might think, well, that must be the spirit doing it. But in many cases, I have disagreed, not like these nitwits that went on sort of yell at it and everything else. I have made it known that I don't believe that this entity in a particular case is what the people in the house think it is, particularly a relative. Yeah. Because it just doesn't come across like that. And the whole nature of the thing changed. It was, it realized I didn't believe what it was, so it changed into something else. So the question arises, and I've thought a lot about this, is some or all of this at times projection by us? Now, I don't think so, because I've seen such overt activity on the part of some of these things, particularly when I've been hit by television sets and chairs and everything else.
It's not like you projected, so like I want to hit myself with a TV.
No, I doubt very much whether that's it. You just, there's a certain presence to another being. You just get the feeling that you just get the certainty that there's someone or something there. Particularly in this Bridgeport house in 71, there were 4 entities coming down that hallway, and I had a physical altercation with one. I doubt very much, because we pushed each other. I doubt very much if that was a projection on my part, particularly with the other people experiencing the same thing and being as terrified as they were. So again, these are all questions about what this could be. So participating in the phenomena may take many different forms, simply by observing it, or even in some cases by creating it. We just have trouble identifying which is which from time to time.
Yeah. Well, it's like someone who, well, actually, no. I can't think of a good analogy for this. But anyway, that's enough of that. Let's go on to something else.
Yeah, here's one from Maddie G in Manchester, England. We must be big in Manchester, England. Let's see, we get a lot of emails from there.
All right, so Maddie writes, hey, Paul and Ben, I look forward to your podcast every week, but I have one question. The classic view of ghosts, which you disagree with, says that the dead can come back because of unfinished business. But how could they do that if they are living parallel lives where they are not dead? Why would they bother with their old life here? There are many cases of the dead coming back to tell something important to their families or to take care of unfinished business. It has been happening in my own family. How do you square that with your theories?
Okay, well, it's a very good question, Matey. I would say, of course, that what you present, the idea of this unfinished business, if that's what it is, does not conflict with the multiverse idea at all. As a matter of fact, it makes it possible. As I said earlier, if someone is dead, they're dead. They would not be concerned with unfinished business because they would have no life left. Okay, that's the clinical definition of death. Is you're dead, all right? So the whole idea that you got the spirit of somebody coming back bothers me because I don't like dualism. It's a mixture of good old Greek classic dualism in philosophy with dear old 19th century spiritualism. People don't know what these things could be, so they assume, from our own point of view, which is very inadequate, these are the spirits of dead people. How can you be you without your body? Your body is not bad. Matter is not bad. It's not evil. Spirit is not necessarily good. All things are good. Both are good. I think. I shouldn't have said not necessarily good because it is good. Everything is good, including matter. So be that as it may, we cannot be ourselves without our bodies, in my opinion. Our bodies are intimate tools and vessels for us, for our experiences, for our accumulation of memories, imagination, creativity, and everything else. And I think you cannot be you fully without your body. So I never really believed in this spirit thing. Okay, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know, but I've yet to hear an argument that kind of proves that I'm even near wrong on this. And my whole experience over 42 years is that these things are not spirits of dead people. Okay, so what about the unfinished business? Why should, when you pass to your when your body here is used up and your consciousness simply shifts to where you were living, probably a physical life somewhere or somewhere else. That's how I think it works. Well, you're already living this life. Why would it be of any consequence to you to have unfinished business here, to try and finish it up? Well, there's a thing called love, which is really, I think, and I'm not a touchy-feely guy, but love really is the greatest power in the multiverse. It cuts through boundaries. It defeats enemies such as parasites. It builds bridges. It creates unity. And unity is everything. Unity is power. Unity is knowledge. So this is what I think really dominates in the multiverse. And when you have love for someone or for your family in any place or any time, there is a certain unity among your lives. The nature of spiritual growth, in my opinion, is the more you realize how many lives you're really living across the multiverse. It sounds strange, but it's a great unity within yourself. You are able to tap into the knowledge, the wisdom, the mistakes you are making in other lives, and you can bring them together in your consciousness to help improve your general life as it is, the whole unity of the whole thing, sort of improve it and make you a generally better super being, if you will, super personality. And so when you have unfinished business that involves your family, I think particularly, and all the cases I've heard of unfinished business, ghosts, quote unquote, has to do with something that would be good for the family of the person that's supposedly left behind. Now, I don't believe anybody's left behind. As a matter of fact, I believe you are with this person, this loved one, in many other lives, going on just as you were, better than you were usually, sometimes worse, but that love is there, and that still goes on. When we have a loss in our family, that's how we look at it, and we consider it a joyful thing, because we're still with that person. It's not that they're here, it's that we're with them in parallel lives. So I think that's essentially how it works. If you look at it in that larger perspective, it becomes perfectly logical that someone would try to communicate to you, well, here's where the will is, and beyond that, there are many worlds, I believe, in which, and that I believe I've seen, in which many of these people are in, I suppose, what mediums and psychics might like to call more enlightened states, higher, what do they
consciousnesses.
Say? Higher consciousnesses.
Higher levels of consciousness.
Higher levels of consciousness, where you are very aware of many of the other lives you're living, the people you love very much, who are somehow with you all the time. And that's how and essentially what communication and guidance can take place. And again, it's not a ghost or a spirit. It's the actual person reaching across these boundaries we've been talking about. And it seems to become easier when they're thinner. But in many of these more conscious or highly conscious states, I think we can actually do that more easily than we can from here. And what are we doing when we're praying or when we're attempting to reach out to another person, when we're meditating or doing anything like that, we're reaching across world boundaries. We are rising above what we are here to become what we are there. Higher consciousnesses. So I think that's how it works. So I don't see any conflict whatsoever, matey, in this. It's a matter of kind of getting beyond the old ways of thinking about things. And we have a caller. Hello, welcome to Behind the Paranormal.
Guys, how are you? It's Scott from Uxbridge.
Oh, hi, Scott.
Yeah, not bad, Scott.
How are things
right,
in Uxbridge?
Things are fine.
Not frozen solid like everywhere else?
No, not too bad.
Okay.
Earlier last week, though, I think I could have thrown a bucket of water in the air.
Oh, I know it.
It was just brutal. But here's what I wanted to ask you guys about, and I turned the show on a little late, but were you answering a question about herbal remedies or something at one point?
Oh, no, someone wrote in about why sage helps to purify a paranormal situation.
Oh, okay.
Effectively, yeah.
Okay. Well, here's what I wanted to ask you guys about, if you could kind of inform me a little bit. There's a technique. I think it's called either smooting or smoting.
Oh, smoting. Yeah, smoting.
Okay.
And yeah, you take a bunch of dried leaves, you bind them together real tight, almost like a cigar with twine. You light it on fire, you blow it out, you wait till the hot ash is gone.
It's smothering. My bad.
and then you basically, while it's still smoldering, these leaves are still smoldering, you rub it on. Say the person has a problem with their arm, you rub it on their arm, and then you rub the warm ash into the skin, and it's supposed to draw the poison out or something. Do you know the technique I'm talking about?
Ben, that's your domain.
Well, actually, it depends. Some Native American tribes do that. They do use the burned or charred leaves themselves to use it as an herbal remedy. Others just use it for a blessing kind of process. Like, I stayed on a Navajo reservation for a week with some people from my school, and I stayed on a monastery there, and they had a church, and one of the sachems, or it wasn't a sachem, one of the medicine men was blessing us and not dowsing, like using like smothering stuff on us. Because I think it's smothering. I sound like an idiot. I should know this.
Yeah, smudging.
Smudging.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't quite recall the exact term either. It's been a while since I heard about it.
Smothering, smudging. That's it. Yeah. So
Smudging,
You smother if you have too much smoke, I guess.
I guess. Yeah. You could get like consumption or whatever. Anyway, so the point I'm trying to make is it really depends on who uses it and like what the tribe's traditions are or whatever. I've never seen it done myself. I've just seen like the blessings with the smudging, and that's about it.
Okay, because I remember I worked at some whole health expos back in the mid-'90s, and I remember I was basically audio taping the lecturers. And I remember there was something about it. I didn't get to sit in on that when I was busy, because basically what we would do is we would tape the lecturers, and then we would make copies. The guy I worked for, we would make copies of the lectures if you wanted to buy them. And it could be anybody, like Stanton Friedman used to go to them. Bud Hopkins was there. But there were other people. One gentleman from NPR, an engineer, did a whole talk about connecting history and astrology.
Interesting.
Huh.
Yeah, it was a fascinating job. Met some very interesting people, but I remember there was a whole lecture on that, and I just didn't get a chance to sit in on it.
Well, one thing I might point out, Scott, is that there is a factor here that maybe we don't often consider. And we often bring it up in terms of using holy water or things like that.
Oh, belief, yeah, faith.
Yeah, and that's simply faith. Even Jesus would heal people and say, well, it's your faith that's done it. They give him all the credit. So it's your faith. And I don't know if a lot of people notice that a lot. And something like with smudging or even, rubbing the ashes on a wound, say, or as you mentioned, an arm, that could be simply, I'm not going to say it's a placebo, but it could be something that really brings out the power of one's own healing, the part of our minds that will
there's another
heal
facet
ourselves.
too. I mean, if you're burning something, you're creating an exothermic reaction, which would change the chemistry of these leaves.
That's true too. Yeah.
So that changed chemistry might have some sort of medicinal properties.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Cool.
Okay. Well, great.
All right.
Always nice to hear from you, Scott. Take care.
Y'all have a nice evening.
You too.
You too. Okay, but I think we have time for one more email. This is from Meg in Pittsburgh.
Alrighty. So Meg writes to us, Dear Paul and Ben, I never miss your show, but sometimes I cannot sleep after hearing them. The whole issue of parasites
Neither can we.
Yeah, the whole issue of parasites has implied background story every time you talk about them. That is...
Could you read that again, please?
Sorry, the whole issue of parasites has implied background story every time you talk about them.
Right.
That is the question of whether the human was created or genetically manipulated by them for their own sustenance. What do you say? Or what say you, actually?
Oh, yeah, people are starting to tie in the way I say things. All right. Well...
What say you?
I'll say,
Dave?
Meg, it's a difficult question. I think that none of us wants to think that we were manipulated into being cattle, all right? There are, I think of some of the trying to look at the bright side, I see some of the Gary Larson cartoons. If you remember the old Far Side cartoons, he's since retired, unfortunately, but he would these one-panel things that were just so hilarious, and very, sort of zany kind of humor that comes with high intelligence this fellow had. And I remember one in particular where he always had cows and chickens and goofy-looking people.
Yeah, anthropomorphic, like animals.
Yeah, and if some archaeologist finds this someday, it's going to be like, what kind of troglodytes lived in the 21st century? So he had one where the cattle were always trying to rebel against the farmer, you know. And there was one where they would attack the house and they would hook the farmer up to the milking machine to see how he liked it. And kind of,
Yeah.
you know, so I mean, it implied that even the cows could gain freedom from their oppressor, okay? And our oppressors, we have bad enough oppressors among many people and many governments, but no further comment. But we have also ability to do something about this. I think our greatest are perhaps these parasites, whether they for some reason or in some way specifically hijacked us. I'd like to think it's more like that. But I tend to go back to the old idea that I like to think of that God created us for good things and for good reasons, not what we think of as demons creating us or manipulating our genetics or whatever for their reasons. I just can't. There's so many good things about the world. You don't hear that if you watch the news very often, but there's so many good things about the world and so many wonderful people and so many wonderful things about people that there's just too much good in us for me to believe that we were created for a negative reason. I can't really accept that. But again, that doesn't mean we can't be hijacked. And I think very often many individuals and families have been hijacked for the sustenance of these unsavory creatures. So that's what I say about that, Meg. So anyway, I guess we're just about toward the end.
Yeah, we have about 3 minutes.
Okay, well, in that case, so what do you think, Ben? Any further comments at any of our comments tonight?
I think not.
Okay.
Well, I was trying to make a play on words. Any further comments? Well, I learned a lot. This was fun.
We always do. That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
We learn a lot from those who write in and from our guests as well.
And that's what
we will try to have more open line shows. I really I like the comment. You weren't. I think you were on the phone at the time, but somebody wrote in that we're smarter than most of our guests, which I think is saying a little too much. We try not to have guests who are. We try to have guests who have a lot to contribute. Yeah, but I mean, between us, we got 50 years of experience.
Well, look at the
here,
field we're in. I mean, there's
yeah,
bound
exactly.
to be some,
and again,
some
we could be wrong, but we have some unusual ideas. What the hey,
Yeah.
So,
well,
anyway.
there's bound to be some fruits among the.
Well, of course.
I couldn't think of a good analogy to tie it together. I'm sorry.
And congratulations to Donna, our winner. We'll give you full information on that next week, and she can expect a copy of Faces at the Window. Okay, so. We are just about done, I guess, and we wanted to just suggest that you look at our website, behindtheparanormal.com, which has information on guests, past, present, future, and subjects for the show, and all sorts of great stuff that you might be interested in following our work about, and it connects with newenglandghosts.com, which is our main site.
So any news about the Necronomicon?
Yes, actually, we're going to have, I believe it's next week.
Is it next week?
You will be with us, yeah. So we'll find out about,
I jumped the gun.
You jumped the gun.
I'm sorry.
So anyway, you can buy my books on the site. I hope you do that, certainly. Help us keep the 450 podcasts free. And subscribe to our newsletter or apply to become a reporter at the site, show reporter.
All right, so don't forget, we have nearly 450 free podcasts of all our shows, and they are available at www.behindtheparanormal.com. paranormal.com. You can also apparently get them on iTunes.
You can get them on iTunes.
Yeah,
They've always been
yeah,
on iTunes. The CBS ones are on iTunes.
You can get the CBS ones on iTunes.
Yeah.
But if you don't feel like going on iTunes, you can always get them on our website.
Yeah, they're easier to find.
Yes.
Anyway, so many thanks to our producer, Ben himself. And next week, January 14th, we will have University of Rhode Island professor and Necronomicon organizer, Niels Hobbs, to discuss H.P. Lovecraft and the paranormal.
Ah, yes. Fitting name for a man doing an H.P. Lovecraft convention. And on our CBS radio edition on January 13th, another 13, we'll have our happy Mayan debaters, Dierlon and Dr. Chris Keating, back on the show to do our final post-mortem on the 2012 prophecy. Did anything happen last month? Or didn't it? You might be surprised to hear the answer.
Well, we leave you this evening with a thoughtful quote from an anonymous quotee. Sometimes we need to stop analyzing the past, stop planning the future, stop trying to figure out precisely how we feel, stop deciding with our mind what we want with our heart to feel, and sometimes we just have to go with whatever happens, happens, unquote.
Wow, that's a lot for a small quote for the end of the show. But
sorry.
It's okay. I understand. But it
don't
was
like
very,
long
it was very,
things, do you?
No, I like it short and sweet. But that's about a wrap for us. So thanks for joining us on our great cosmic journey, and we shall see you next time.
Return to this radio frequency 167 hours from now for another edition of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno.